So long I didn't want to write a book about myself because I thought, what an arrogant thing to do.
The wild energy of the legendary bassist Flea is fueled by a secret hate for certain bands. He is a primal force, a musician whose whole life is about raw, honest, and evolving art. Because of this, he has a powerful dislike for anything that feels fake or planned. This isn't just a matter of taste. It is a total rejection of the uninspired. Let us now reveal the bands that are the musical opposite of his very soul. Number 1, Greta Van Fleet.
The funny thing is we're always moving on to the next.
Yeah.
We're actually...
A deep sadness seems to haunt Flea when he talks about the state of modern rock and roll. He has lamented in interviews that he feels the genre, which once was a powerful engine of change and innovation, has stalled. He sees it less as a living, breathing art form and more as a museum piece, a place where people go to admire the glories of the past. While he hasn't pointed his finger directly at them, a band like Greta Van Fleet perfectly embodies this very specific artistic anxiety. This young band exploded onto the scene with a sound so remarkably and intentionally similar to the iconic 1970s rock gods Led Zeppelin that it became their primary talking point. For a lifelong musical anarchist like Flea, whose entire career has been a quest to create sounds that have never existed before, a band that so skillfully recreates the past would likely feel like a creative surrender. It's not a question of whether the members are talented musicians. It's a question of artistic philosophy.
Well, sometimes they would wear the same clothes and then they would switch classes.
Oh,
you know, like the
did
classic,
that, yeah.
like...
In Flea's world, the highest duty of an artist is to push forward into the unknown, not to build a beautiful and comfortable home in the territory that was already mapped out decades ago. To understand this deep-seated need for originality, you have to go back to Flea's formative years, a chaotic and vibrant time he describes with raw honesty in his autobiography, Acid for the Children. He wasn't just a fan of music. He was a desperate seeker of new experiences. He and his bandmates, Anthony Kiedis and Hillel Slovak, were not interested in playing cover songs or sounding like their heroes. They were obsessed with a radical kind of alchemy. Their mission was to take the ferocious, untamed energy of the Los Angeles punk scene, the sound of bands like Black Flag and the Germs who were actively trying to dismantle rock and roll, and fuse it with the deep, complex, and revolutionary grooves of funk music from artists like Parliament Funkadelic and Sly and the Family Stone. This was not a casual mixing of styles. It was a deeply serious artistic project to birth something new. They wanted to create a sound that was uniquely theirs, a sound that reflected their strange, beautiful, and often chaotic lives in LA. It was a mission driven by the core belief that art must be a reflection of the present moment, a snapshot of here and now, not a beautifully rendered photograph of a time long gone. Now, with this context, try to imagine Flea's internal reaction to hearing Greta Van Fleet for the first time. He would immediately recognize the incredible skill. He would hear the vocalist's astonishing ability to mimic Robert Plant's legendary wail.
We fit in. He has been writing music is a natural process that is always going on.
He would hear the guitarist's masterful command of Jimmy Page's bluesy, heavy riffs and tones. He would hear the thunderous, powerful drumming reminiscent of John Bonham. He would recognize every single element as a perfect, lovingly crafted tribute to a band he likely respects. But then, a wave of disappointment would likely follow. He would see it as a form of artistic taxidermy, a perfect, lifelike recreation of magnificent beast, but ultimately a lifeless form. It lacks the wild, unpredictable spark of a living creature. For Flea, the magic of music is in its aliveness, its danger, its possibility of failure. A perfect recreation has no danger. It has no risk. It offers the comfort of familiarity, but Flea has never been an artist who seeks comfort. He seeks the thrill of the new, the shock of the unexpected. He would see a band like Greta Van Fleet not as the future of rock, but as a beautiful, powerful, and ultimately sad echo of its past. Looking to the past was one issue, but he had a much bigger problem with a whole scene that felt completely fake. Number 2, Mötley Crüe.
Same tattoos we've always had. We just added to it. Just added a little more.
10 years of work.
In the sprawling, sun-baked landscape of Los Angeles in the early 1980s, a silent war was being waged for the city's musical soul. Flea was a dedicated foot soldier on one side of this conflict. On his side was the grimy, frantic, and fiercely independent punk rock scene. It was a world hidden away in run-down buildings and backyard parties, a world of outcasts and misfits who were creating a new culture from scratch. On the other side of the war, basking in the neon glow of the famous Sunset Strip, was the glamorous, commercially driven, and image-obsessed hair metal scene. The undisputed kings of this glittering kingdom were Mötley Crüe, a band that represented the absolute antithesis of everything Flea and his punk rock comrades believed in. This wasn't merely a disagreement over musical style. It was a fundamental clash of philosophies about the very purpose of art and life. Flea's world was built on a foundation of raw, brutal authenticity, even when that truth was ugly or uncomfortable. The world of Mötley Crüe was built on the creation of a beautiful, exciting, and highly marketable rock and roll fantasy. Flea's memoir, Acid for the Children, paints a gritty, visceral picture of his life as a young punk.
Sort of lighting ourselves on fire and trying to beat ourselves every single tour.
It was a life lived on the edge, filled with poverty, friendship, and a desperate search for meaning that he found in the chaotic energy of music. The punk shows he attended were not comfortable concert experiences. They were intense, often violent rituals of release. They were held in illegal venues where the air was thick with the smell of sweat, cheap beer, and rebellion. The bands on stage, like the Germs or Fear, were not trying to entertain.
It's an all-day event with all these bands.
Last year when we played,
They were trying to confront. They were raw, aggressive, and completely scornful of the idea of mainstream success. They were making music for themselves and their small community of fellow outsiders. It was music as a survival tool. Now, transport yourself just a few miles away to the Sunset Strip. The clubs like the Whiskey A Go-Go and the Roxy were packed with bands like Mötley Crüe with their teased hair, elaborate makeup, and custom leather outfits. Their goal was not survival, it was conquest. They were there to get noticed, to get a record deal, to become massively famous rock stars, and to live out the ultimate fantasy of fame and fortune. For a young Flea, who was finding a spiritual kind of salvation in the pure, unadulterated energy of punk and funk, the commercial ambitions of the hair metal scene would have been deeply offensive. He viewed music as something sacred, a powerful force that could connect you to a higher truth. The Sunset Strip scene seemed to treat music as a cynical tool, a means to an end to get money, fame, and attention.
Look at Tom, look on his leg. You know that one? See it? Can you see this one?
The songwriting itself often followed a predictable formula, built around simple, catchy choruses and flashy, look-at-me guitar solos that were designed to impress a crowd, not to express a complex, personal emotion. Flea's own bass playing was evolving into something truly unique and revolutionary. He was blending the rhythmic complexity of funk with the speed and aggression of punk, pushing his instrument into uncharted territory. In contrast, the bass playing in many hair metal bands was often relegated to a simple, supportive role, a low-end rumble meant to stay out of the way of the singer and the lead guitarist. It was a fundamental clash of artistic intent. Was music a vehicle for fame and fortune, or was it a deeply personal journey into the soul? Flea had chosen his path, and it was a million miles away from the one Mötley Crüe so famously and successfully traveled. The focus on image was bad, but music that was intentionally predictable was an even greater crime. Number 3. Nickelback.
Connected with me, and I still like it. And it's actually kind of nice to still like some of your own.
You can understand Flea's entire musical philosophy through a single, powerful word: energy. It's not a controlled, predictable energy. It's the wild, improvisational, and joyful energy of a live performance, where at any given moment, the entire song could veer off into a new, uncharted direction. His bass playing is not just a rhythm. It's a dynamic, living conversation. It's an intricate dance of improvisation that he creates in the moment with his bandmates. This deep-seated love for spontaneity and in-the-moment creation comes from his profound and lifelong passion for jazz music. In his autobiography, he speaks with great reverence about his stepfather, a professional jazz musician, and describes his childhood home as being constantly filled with the sounds of jazz legends. He was a gifted trumpet player as a youth, and he fell head over heels in love with the incredible freedom, technical brilliance, and improvisational fire of jazz pioneers like Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, and Ornette Coleman.
I'll build this big sports complex and we'll just make sure that we've got chillers.
In the world of jazz, a song is a living entity. It is never performed the same way twice. It breathes, it evolves, and it transforms every single night based on the feelings of the musicians and the energy of the room. This is the sacred spirit that Flea carries into every performance with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, consider the music of Nickelback, a band that has become a global symbol for the absolute opposite of this spirit. Nickelback's music is the very definition of predictability.
We get that. We're like, okay. And then it's like, well, no, we don't just want an American band. We want a local band.
Right.
They have become a cultural punching bag for their famously formulaic approach to songwriting, and for a good reason. Their songs almost always follow a very strict, unbending structure, most famously the verse-chorus model. It's a structure built for maximum radio friendliness, with a quiet, often clean-sounding verse designed to build tension before a loud, distorted, and supposedly powerful chorus explodes. Every element is timed and placed with the precision of a factory assembly line.
Do a little more looking backwards at it. You're like, you guys got 6 albums, and it's like, I don't mean to be that way, but it's like.
The sounds are heavily polished in the studio. The emotion feels calculated and generic, and there's absolutely no room for surprise or deviation. For a musician like Flea, who truly lives for the unexpected musical moment, this would be the equivalent of an artistic prison. His greatest joy as a performer comes from the interplay with his bandmates. The thrilling risk that a song could completely fall apart or, conversely, soar into a moment of unplanned, transcendent genius.
Be anonymous on the internet and say something or repeat something or just parrot something, and groupthink and mob mentalities.
Nickelback's music is specifically engineered to be completely free of risk. It's a safe, reliable product manufactured and market-tested to appeal to the widest possible audience. Imagine Flea, a man whose musical heroes include famously challenging and experimental artists like the jazz revolutionary Ornette Coleman, hearing a Nickelback song for the first time. His musically trained ear would immediately dissect it. He would hear the rigid April fourth-time signature that never wavers.
And I don't know, that for me, that song just, it connected with me, and I still like it. And it's actually kind of nice to still like some of your old songs. Sometimes you go.
He would recognize the handful of simple chord progressions that they use over and over again. He would likely be able to predict every single note of the vocal melody and every beat of the drum fill before it even happens. This utter predictability would be, from his artistic perspective, the greatest sin a musician could commit. Music, in his world, should be an adventure. It should be a journey of discovery for both the performer and the listener. It should surprise you, challenge you, and take you to emotional and sonic places you have never been before. Predictable formulas were one thing, but music that felt like a polished pop product was just as bad. Number 4. Imagine Dragons.
And I asked her, Mom, and this is probably a terrible question to ask of your mom, but we were arguing about things, not arguing, but yeah, we were arguing a little bit.
The musical landscape of the 21st century is largely dominated by a specific sound that blurs the lines between rock and pop. This hybrid genre creates huge, emotionally soaring, and anthemic songs that are perfectly engineered to fill stadiums and dominate the global music charts. Of all the bands in this new generation of rock, Imagine Dragons are perhaps the most successful and recognizable. Their music is instantly identifiable by its massive, sing-along choruses, its heavily layered electronic production, and its broad, universally appealing lyrical themes of overcoming adversity.
End of something, beginning of something.
The album really dives into kind of those concepts, so we felt like that was the right.
And for a musician like Flea, whose entire artistic identity was forged in the gritty, sweaty, and deeply funky streets of Los Angeles, this particular sound would likely feel completely alien and disconnected from the raw, human spirit of rock and roll that he has consistently championed throughout his life. It's not a question of how loud the music is or how successful the band is. It's about the very texture and intention behind the sound. Flea's music has always had dirt under its fingernails. It smells like the clubs it was born in.
It was something that I cared deeply about, and I really wanted, if there was greater understanding to be had, I wanted it.
The sound of a band like Imagine Dragons, in contrast, is sparkling, sanitized, and perfectly clean. In recent years, Flea has expressed a certain weariness with the traditional rock band format, especially when it becomes stale, predictable, and devoid of genuine excitement. It is highly plausible that the incredibly commercialized and pop-oriented sound of Imagine Dragons would fall directly into the category of music he now finds uninspiring.
You worked so hard to get somewhere, and then you got there and you're like, oh, this is the last place I want to be.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers began their journey as a wild, untamed, and often ridiculous force of nature, playing in tiny, packed LA clubs. They were a punk-funk party band, and their energy was raw, immediate, and street level. Their primary goal was to connect with the handful of people in that small room, to make them dance, laugh, and feel something real and visceral.
It really is a difficult place for a gay kid to grow up. I had a lot of friends who were...
The music of Imagine Dragons, on the other hand, feels like it was conceived and born in a stadium. The production is immense and meticulously layered, often featuring programmed electronic drums and vast walls of synthesizers that smooth out any and all of the rough edges that make music feel human. The essential sound of four people in a room, struggling with and creating magic on their instruments, can often get completely lost beneath the weight of the glossy, perfect studio production. Flea's bass playing is a profoundly physical act.
It's not like a religion where you just go on the holidays or something. It's like your whole life is based around it.
You can see it in every performance. He attacks the strings. He slaps them with percussive fury. He makes them groan and sing with emotion. It is a sweaty, visceral, and beautifully imperfect performance. While the musicians in Imagine Dragons are undoubtedly skilled, the overall sound of the band is far more controlled, less organic, and less about individual performance. The broad, inspirational choruses are engineered to be emotionally accessible to every single person in a 50,000-seat arena at the exact same time. This brand of huge, polished rock was not just a modern problem. It had a powerful ancestor. Number 5, Europe.
Zooming in, I've known the guitar player for 45 years. I saw him play when he was 14, I was 15.
In the middle of the 1980s, a fascinating cultural split was happening in music. Deep in the underground of Los Angeles, Flea and the early Red Hot Chili Peppers were hammering out a bizarre, aggressive, and wildly original new sound. At the exact same time, a song from Swedish band called Europe ascended to take over the entire planet.
And people started to scatter a bit, do other projects, do other albums, but we always knew.
That song was, of course, The Final Countdown. With its unforgettable, triumphant, and synthesizer-driven main riff and its massive, almost cinematic sound, it became the ultimate global rock anthem. For a young Flea, who was dedicating every ounce of his being to the raw, street-level power of funk and punk, this kind of bombastic, slick, and larger-than-life music would have felt like it beamed down from another planet.
For us, it's just an album track. We wrote a song for our third album. We wanted an opening track that was exciting, and
it was the absolute polar opposite of the authentic, improvisational, and gritty music he and his friends were creating and living for. Europe's sound was huge, perfectly polished, and almost cartoonishly epic. Flea's sound was raw, sweaty, funky, and dangerously real. Let's paint a picture of this contrast. Imagine the scene in Los Angeles around 1986. Flea, Anthony Kiedis, and Hillel Slovak are playing a frantic, high-energy show in a tiny, packed club. The air is hot and thick.
called WC, which means actually toilet in Swedish. Yeah, I thought the name was cool, and
the music is a chaotic, beautiful mess of hardcore punk speed, deep funk bass lines, and strange stream of consciousness lyrics. This is art born from pure youthful energy, a shared sense of humor, and a powerful desire to be completely different from everything else happening on the radio. It's the sound of their specific time and place. Now, imagine turning on that radio in 1986.
But ABBA was big, but ABBA also, it took time for them to become, have a good relationship with Sweden.
You are immediately hit with that majestic, unmistakable synthesizer opening of the final countdown. It does not sound like it came from Sweaty Club in LA. It sounds like it was composed for the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games or for the soundtrack of a Hollywood blockbuster movie about astronauts going on a heroic mission.
I think the energy and the sound of the album makes it a bit relevant, you know.
The production is immense. The vocals soar to the heavens. An entire song has a feeling of corporate, polished perfection that was designed for global domination. For Flea, a musician who is learning his craft from the deep, raw emotion of old blues records and the spontaneous, conversational fire of jazz, this kind of calculated, epic rock music would have seemed completely and utterly inauthentic. It lacked the essential human element that he so deeply craved in art.
That was amazing. We have some other big names talking about us in the documentary, so we're very lucky.
It didn't have the groove. It didn't have the swing. It lacked the feeling of a real, breathing rhythm section locking in together and creating something organic and alive. That iconic keyboard riff, as catchy as it is, feels like a perfectly programmed machine of a melody. It is precise, powerful, and inhuman. Flea's bass lines, by contrast, are like living organisms. They breathe, they stutter, they rush forward with excitement, and they pull back with tension. What do you think of Flea's musical taste? Are there other bands you think you would despise? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to like this article and subscribe for more.